Our exhortation this morning comes from Luke 37 through 38. It says, "Judge not, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For with the measure you use it will be measured back to you." This sounds familiar, right? Because it is the final two verses from my sermon last week. But in the interest of time, I had cut out an application on these verses. And so I'm going to share that now and expand on it a little bit. But I'll just remind you that Jesus, when he said these things, he is talking, it's in the context, he's talking about loving your enemies. And I made an application last week about how we use, or rather misuse, social media in this way, and how we don't love our enemies. But this is not just an online issue. This is common in our everyday lives. It's in our face-to-face relationships where most of our conflict happens, right? In our marriages, in our families, at school, at work, between husbands and wives, between parents and children, between siblings. We may not think of these people as our enemy, but we can, and often do, treat them as such. And when we do this, we are sowing seeds that inevitably grow and bear rotten fruit. And Jesus says plainly here, with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. And this is why Jesus' words are so necessary for us. Judge not and condemn not. Now, Jesus is not telling us to abandon discernment or pretend that sin doesn't exist. He is addressing a posture of the heart that stands over others as though we ourselves were not in need of God's grace and charity. We make all kinds of excuses for why we ought to be treated with kindness and given the benefit of the doubt. You know, right? We're the heroes of our own story. And so as we mull over conflict, it's really easy to come up with a story where we are the ones who have been offended by everybody else. But when we're asked to think about the other person, we are quick to condemn and judge them. If we deal in stinginess, bitterness, and fault-finding, those very things will return to us. A judgmental person, therefore, should not be surprised when he finds himself judged by others. But there is a better way, and it's the way of Christ. And Jesus said, "Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you." And he calls us to sow mercy so that mercy returns to us. To become the kind of people whose instinct is not to attack or accuse, but to bear with others in patience. And this becomes especially important when we face trials, disappointments, and suffering. You know, difficulty can either make you harsh or it can make you humble. And Jesus urges us. He says, when trials press in, let it press out forgiveness, not judgment. When difficulties come, and they will, practice patience, not condemnation. When times are tough, have a spirit of generosity, not suspicion or bitterness. And this is how warriors are built in God's kingdom. Every trial you experience is a crossroad. When someone disappoints you, hurts you, or wrongs you, intentionally or unintentionally, you have a decision to make. You can respond with criticism, coldness, distance, resentment. Or you can respond like Christ, forgiving as you have been forgiven, showing grace as grace has been shown to you, trusting that the measure you use will return to you. Again, Jesus does not ask you to ignore sin or pretend that everything is even painless. What he does is he commands you to imitate him in the midst of it. So this morning, as we come to our time of confession, let us confess the judgmental spirit that so easily takes root in us, especially when we feel wronged. You know, let us confess how quick we are to assume the worst, to vent our frustrations, to condemn others, all while insisting that we ourselves are the victims. Let us confess our reluctance to forgive, our stinginess with grace, and our eagerness to be critical. And then, as we've confessed that, let us come to Christ, who was judged himself in our place so that we might be forgiven, who poured out his mercy on his enemies, who gave himself generously. He was pressed down, shaken together. That's what happened, right? The grace we get from God, remember I used that example, it's like a full bag of chips. It's not a half bag of chips like we normally get. God gives us more than we deserve. He gives us more than we even expect. So let us repent and seek that same generous heart from the Spirit, so that the measure we give may be in abundant grace, and the measure returned to us may be full of Christ's blessing.